do surgery as an anesthetic? And the answer is because it's not an anesthetic. It only affects the neuromuscular junction. Give the person curare, they go limp, but they're fully awake and fully aware and they feel everything. Does not affect the sensory system. Does not affect, it only affects the motor system. So they can't move, but they're totally awake. So they go limp and it looks like they're out, but it's not relieving any pain. Now actually they do use curare for some surgeries. When a person is awake, they will inject curare into the muscles around the eye when they do eye surgeries, so that the person isn't looking around. They will also use local anesthetic, but the curare is being used simply so their eye doesn't move around involuntarily and mess up the surgeon. So it is used not as an anesthetic, but to make the person paralyzed basically so that they don't wiggle around during the surgery. Eye surgery is typically done when the person is awake but under a local anesthetic, so they're not given a general anesthetic that knocks them out. If a quadriplegic has a neck injury to the spine, then do they have loss of sensation in all four limbs? It's possible, but not necessarily. More typical quadriplegic has all four limbs affected in some way or other. That's why they're called a quadriplegic, because all four limbs are affected by the injury. But they may have full sensation in the upper body and loss of sensation in the legs. They may have hypersensation, so they have more extreme sensation. They may have phantom sensations, so they may experience things that aren't there. So feel like somebody is touching them or something is hurting them when in fact there's nothing there. Do they have a loss of motor function in all four limbs? Not necessarily. A very typical pattern, a person in a wheelchair who's a quadriplegic may be able to wheel themselves around. A common pattern is that they may have lost the opposing thumb motion, so they can't pick up something like this, but they may be able to pick it up like that. So you oftentimes see a quadriplegic who uses a wheelchair, but when they go to write their name, they'll hold their writing instrument that way. But they may have loss of motor function, they may have no loss of motor function in any of the four limbs. Might be only that sensation is affected. Loss of reflex, again, may or may not be. Now there's a video about Ellen Stahl, you can read about her. She was a Cal State Fullerton student a number of years ago, and she was an aspiring actress and model and aerobics teacher, and she was looking forward to a great career. And she was a freshman, I think, was driving on the 57 freeway on the exchange to the 91 before they remodeled it. You folks probably never saw it that way, but it used to be flat. Now it's tilted. They put a tilt into the road. And as she was going around that curve, her car flipped over into that area between the two freeways, and she hit her head against the ceiling and it was squished in, and she got neck injuries and arm injuries, ended up in a wheelchair as a quadriplegic. And she made the news because she ended up as the first quadriplegic to pose for Playboy. So she wrote a letter to Playboy magazine, appeared in the 1980s in the issue, the first quadriplegic person to do so. She was an actress, continued to get roles. She had some roles on soap operas. Sometimes she'd get a nasty letter from, she was so beautiful that people wrote in and said, why don't you get somebody who's really a quadriplegic to play the role instead of hiring, you know, a normal person? She would write back to, yeah, well, yes, I am a quadriplegic. Not all of us are not good looking, you know. We can be sexy people too. We can have a sex life. We're not just all paint with our toes, you know, or do computers, two things that she didn't do. And one of the arguments that she made as an inspirational speaker and actress was that quadriplegics don't want to be thought of as asexual people either. They want to still be full human beings with all the capacities and all the interests that humans have. All right, differences among lesion, ablation. So basically all the bets are off. So the best answer would be maybe. Maybe not, maybe, maybe not, maybe, maybe not. She had a full reflex, so she was able to exercise herself by stretching her legs. So she had some hypersensation in her feet and legs, but she couldn't move them, so she couldn't walk. She had motion in the upper body, but she lost the opposing thumb motion. So to be an actress, you have to drink wine. So picking up a wine glass the normal way was wrong. So she learned a technique, picking it up this way and transferring it to the other hand and picking it up this way. So she pick up the wine glass, transfer it up that way, and make a big dramatic gesture for drinking her wine. So she learned adaptations like that. She also could stretch. She had the spinal reflex, so she could exercise her muscles by stretching them. And so she maintained some muscle tension in her legs and didn't have when the reflex is lost, oftentimes you will get atrophy of the muscles in a case of paralysis like that. So a person who's got the motor reflex is able to maintain muscle tension so that they don't have the atrophy of the muscles. Although she did get the atrophy of her thumb, so that whereas normally there's a muscle here in the thumb, in her case, this bulge was not there, and so that muscle had atrophied away. All right, differences among a lesion means you remove a small part of the brain. So I described how to do a lesion study, lowering them using a stereotaxic atlas, anesthetize the animal, drill through the skull, lowering the electrode into place, burning out part of the brain. Later you do histology, which means after the research is done, you cut up the animal is sacrificed, so they're anesthetized and euthanized and killed in a non-painful way. Then their brains are removed and dissected and sliced up so you can tell exactly, did you lesion what you meant to lesion? Because you want to verify, if you claimed you lesioned this part of the brain, that is indeed the part of the brain that had been destroyed when you make the argument about what it did. Ablation is a surgery that removes a large hunk of brain, and a section is where something is cut but nothing is removed. So you do a section of something means you go and you make a cut separating parts of the brain. Any questions about the quiz? So today is this commemoration of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, and tax is due tomorrow. Also Psych Day. How many went to Psych Day? Anybody go to Psych Day? Not even a single one. Okay. I guess we won't say anything about that. Did you go over there?
No.
Oh, well, you probably had classes. Some classes are canceled. They're for psych majors. You know, sometimes some of the psych classes are canceled, so people from those classes are participating over in Psych Day. All right, so I didn't need to send that announcement around, did I? Okay, let's see if there's anything else over here. So be sure to read this essay assignment, which is due 15th week of class. Now, one of the things that I included there was an ad that just came today looking for somebody who's got a degree in psychology to hire them, and saying what qualifications the person has. Some of the qualifications were things like, you know how to modify, you can write in HTML, you know how to run experiments online through the internet, you know how to program, you know databases like MySQL. How many of you know MySQL? So those of you who are planning to be like psych majors and look for jobs like this, you need to develop certain skills, and that's part of what that assignment is about. I want you to think about whatever your major is, what do you need to know in order to get a job in the field you're planning to get? You know, are you going to qualify for the job you're looking for? Read the help wanted ads, see what they're looking for, look at what are the qualifications. Oftentimes students will choose their classes to avoid classes they think are difficult, but that don't end up preparing them actually to be hired to do a job that somebody wants to hire you to do. So we will avoid taking languages because they can drop the language requirement, whereas language skills are important. Oftentimes people will avoid the math and the stat courses. That's the way psych majors usually get jobs. People try to avoid computer programming courses, but those are the skills that people are looking for. These days, how many of you use a cell phone that runs apps? Most of you probably do. Yeah. How many of you write apps? Know how to write in computer program for an app for a smartphone. So these are the things that there are jobs for those things. Know how to do accounting. Know how to do, you know, these are various things that people will hire you to do, and those are things to learn. So at any rate, I'm asking you to think about that, those questions for that assignment.